come through us or any credentialed service officer. And
Can we talk about that for a moment? We're talking about
yeah,
these powers of attorney.
yeah,
So if somebody signs, if they come into your office and they say, look, I filed this claim with the VA myself, they came back and denied it, I want to appeal it because they're wrong, and then you start filling them in on the details, one of the first things you do is have them select a power of attorney.
that's right. And that power of attorney is like a specified power of attorney. It appoints a nationally accredited veterans organization to be your representative for the purpose of VA benefits only. It doesn't let them
Sell
handle
your
your
car or
estate
house.
or any of that kind of stuff. But then
It's a
you've
very
got
limited power of
trained,
attorney.
credentialed help like us to help you with your claim and increase fourfold your opportunity to prevail in getting the benefit you earn by service to our country. Now, I have to be fair. After the notice of disagreement has been filed, you may also hire an attorney if you so choose. That has to be on a contingency fee basis, and they can't get any more than 20% of any retro money that's due to you.
And it must be approved through the regional council of the VA regional office.
Yeah,
Any fee
the agreement,
arrangements.
fee arrangement has to be approved by the VA lawyer at the regional office. And I strongly suggest, while you can hire any attorney you want to, that you get one that is recognized by the VA to practice in VA matters. And that's, believe me, that's a small list compared to
It
all the
sure
number
is.
of attorneys there are. And you can look that list up online. We can help you look it up and find out if that attorney is credentialed or not with the VA. And that's very important because they have to take a test periodically, prove that they know VA law and VA
They've got to know
rules and regulations.
Title 10, Title 38, the manuals, regulations. They've got to know a lot if they're going to effectively represent you. And so not just anybody that has a shingle outside their door as an attorney can represent you. You have to find somebody competent and qualified and credentialed, and then it goes through regional office approval, regional council approval.
All of that process is to protect you from somebody trying to
Unscrupulous.
represent you that's not qualified to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about those veteran service organizations. Let's name a few.
Yeah, there's American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, American Veterans called AMVETS, and
PVA, Paralyzed
Paralyzed
Veterans.
Veterans of America, and others. The
And
ones we've given you are more the bigger ones in terms of membership and numbers of veteran service officers they have credentialed.
And I'll throw this in there, as you all know who listen to American Warrior Radio. I am a retired legal advocate. I worked from the ground level representing vets before the VA all the way up to the Board of Veterans Appeals in D.C. Of all the organizations we're discussing, these national VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations, that provide credentialed assistance through the claims process, when you get to the Board of Veterans Appeals, one big, huge building in D.C., you've got an entire floor of just VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations. Of those, the largest is the Disabled American Veterans. They have the most national appeal officers is what we're called, NAOs. And then you go from there. American Legion is fairly significant. PVA does an amazing job, and you don't have to be a paralyzed vet to engage their services.
That's right. You don't have to be a member of these organizations
That's
to
correct.
engage their services, and they're not going to beat your door down wanting donations and all that kind of stuff.
No, you're gonna, and that's all by law.
Yeah.
Because they're provided this free space by the government to basically act as an intermediary between the veteran and the big bad VA.
And how much do they charge for this service?
This is where it gets interesting. Free.
Yeah, favorite word, free. Attorneys aren't free, but nationally accredited veteran service organizations are free. And believe me, they got a lot of talent. They know what's going on. Guerin, he got all his training and knowledge and the greatness that he has in helping.
Oh, and I am the great one.
Working in that position. So.
I got to tell you, it's a really fast-moving machine when you get to the Board of Veterans Appeals. Even though the decisions are backlogged, sometimes up to 3 years.
Sometimes more, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes. But the backlog, the extreme amount of issues that come before the board, make it it's that reason, because the lower level decisions aren't always based in fundamental soundness.
Yes.
And there are a lot of folks that will appeal anything and everything just to be fighting with the VA. But on a substantive basis, there's way too many rating decisions that are ill-prepared and ill-conceived and end up in appeals.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
bottom line. That's why we've got a backlog at the board.
Yeah, and with the new rating decision format, I predict it's going to get a lot worse, and we'll talk about that in a future show.
We don't want to scare them all today, do
No,
we?
no. But we're talking about a legal right that you have in the VA claims process, and that's to be able to appeal that, and you can get first the decision review officer to relook the
Very
whole
important.
thing,
Very important.
and if that still doesn't
Resolve
result in what you want, you can go to the Board of Veterans Appeals. So there's two steps at trying to get that overturned and rated in your favor.
What if the BVA, the Board of Veterans Appeals, denies it?
Well, we're right down your alley right there. Tell them what happens even if the Board of Veterans Appeals denies it.
So you've gone through the local, you've gone through the DRO, maybe even had a local hearing at your regional office nearby. It got elevated to the Board of Veterans Appeals. They continue to deny it. Then you have an opportunity, and it's only an opportunity, to have your issue brought before the highest court, which is an appellate court. It's on par. It's a federal court, folks. It's the United States Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, used to be called COVA, and they don't take just every case, though. If they do take your case, there's a better than average chance you're not going to have to pay the extreme high cost of having this litigated, because there are agencies, just like every VSO, they provide free representation. But, Glenn, and this is important for everybody to know, you think you're going to get your last best grasp or gasp like a Supreme Court level ruling, but they only select those cases that they think will have a broader bearing on many other cases.
Right, and that are not frivolous.
Exactly. This isn't some, well, I beg to differ between my 10% and my 20%. This is something which we're going to discuss here in a moment. Cases that they're hinge point cases. They make a big difference for a whole lot of people, and that's what they reserve their court time, their docket for.
Right, and they're focusing solely on, did the VA properly follow the law in making their decision? Did they interpret the law correctly? And they've been there since 1988, I believe, when the court started. So there's a ton of case law, their own case law, that's out there that the Board of Veterans Appeals has to rely on if there are previous cases that apply to the type of claim that's being adjudicated, your claim being adjudicated.
So before we get too thick in the weeds here, folks, think of this last-ditch court, the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, as on par with the Supreme Court. They're the last arbiter. They're the last decision. There are some manifestations where you can carry it further to a higher federal district court, but we want you to understand, you don't just go, well, I'm taking my case to COVA, Court of Veterans Appeals. That's not how it happens. It has to be something that is clearly identifiable in the way that the VA has adjudicated the claim and could have great import on the rest of the veterans or claimants.
Yeah. And
so give us an example of a case up here recently that we can discuss.
Well, okay. Recently, the VA court has, not the VA court, it's something we haven't mentioned yet. This is completely outside the VA process. While you're in the VA process, all the way through the Board of Veterans Appeals, the VA has a duty to assist. And once you go from the Board of Veterans Appeals, once you go from the Board of Veterans Appeals to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, it's like being at a regular court. The VA pulls their lawyers out and they're against you, and you get your representation and they're against them, and it's decided in the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and those courts decisions can be in our presidential
Precedents, yeah, they set precedent.
Precedent setting, that's the word.
Mm-hmm.
Quit trying them big words too early in the day.
Well,
but for instance, there's a case here in January 2011. where they ruled the court ruled there's no requirement for a hard copy notice to report for a scheduled VA exam to be contained in the claims file. A veteran's allegation of not receiving notification to report to the exam in connection with his claim does not negate the presumption that the VA did notify him. Well, what's the implication of that, Garen?
It's like this. If a veteran was scheduled to support his or her claim for an exam and they missed the appointment, the VA routinely, FTR, failed to report, denies the claim, bada bing, bada boom, pushes it out the door. Now what the High Court, U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims has said is that there doesn't have to be any hard copy in the VA claims file saying, hey, we did send this notice out to the veteran. So it's really incumbent upon the vet to make sure he or she keeps their appointments, and it's basically no excuse anymore. Ignorance is not an excuse.
That's right.
So if they didn't, in fact, get their notification, it's too bad.
Yeah, and that's really what I call a pro-VA decision, because you should be able to argue that you were not sent the proper notice in writing for your compensation and pension exam, because we change of address, for example, is
great point. Our producer's in here jotting us notes.
Yeah, we're moving at warp speed here, and sometimes we skip over things. But I lost my chain of thought here.
Well,
so.
if you don't change your address and a mailing went out to your previous address of record with the VA, they've notified you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't keep them up to date, they're going to lay back and say, hey, we sent it to you. Now, I personally, I don't know about you, Glenn, because you use your TRICARE, but I've used the VA. I've been scheduled for appointments that I knew nothing about. It does happen. We're all humans. I mean, I'm not going to say the VA is bad at notifying the vets. I think they're generally pretty good. But in a circumstance where it's of that importance, report for this exam or we're going to deny your claim because you didn't. And now the High Court has said, look, VA, you don't have to keep a file. You don't have to keep a copy of that notification in the file. So that's what you're saying is kind of pro-VA. It's taking a little bit of burden off the VA.
Yeah, and that brought back my chain of thought. Thank you very much.
Choo-choo.
Even our local clinic here, I see many times where they've called, the veteran wasn't home, they've left a message, and so that discharges half their duty. The other half is then follow it up with something, a notice in writing to report for a compensation and pension exam, which is an exam in connection with a claim you've made, usually for a service-connected disability. And, this has taken the argument away from you to say they didn't notify me.
So you kind of get the feel, as we're talking through this, we're trying to educate you, give you a little information on how the process works. A case like that went to the highest court because it affects so many veterans. And the High Court basically essentially said, VA, you don't have to keep a hard copy. If you notify them, that's good enough for us. I disagree completely.
Yeah, exactly. And moving along to another important case, we're trying to give you a feel for some of the things that come out of the court here.
I know which one you're going to bring up, and I'm going to get upset by it. But
yeah, I know. That's why I brought it up.
Get me all stirred up.
Okay, this case in August of 2011 was decided that says pain itself does not rise to the level of functional loss. In other words, if you can move your arm just this far and then you get so much pain you can't move it any further, that no longer matters. Painful motion alone is not deemed limited motion. Ratings for the joints are based on actual limitation of motion, not the point in motion where pain begins, which is kind of what I was talking about. What do you think about that one, Garen?
Well, it's another interesting one, folks. We're giving you this. We went from the local level where you file your claim to where you get denied and you go to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. Now we're up at the Supreme Court level of VA stuff. And Mitchell v. Shinseki, Eric Shinseki is the four-star general who's now the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which you mentioned earlier. The court was started the same time this was elevated to a cabinet level position.
Right.
The Court of Veterans Appeals, as I call it. What is it? U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. After you've said COVA for all those years, it's kind of hard to switch.
I know. I still say COVA when it's CAVIC now.
Right. Exactly. So now we've got Secretary Shinseki representing the big bad VA and the U.S. government against this little old veteran who's got an issue at the highest court to hear veterans' claims. The problem with this particular case, again, this is a broadcast idea, and they're going to take this issue and apply it to every single vet. The problem is this has already been established. It's been established that pain with motion or pain on motion, is in itself a rateable disability. If you have functional loss or limitation of motion, that even shores up the claim further.
Right.
But pain has always been involved in determining the level of disability. Now, because of Mitchell v. Shinseki, whoop, that one's gone.
Yeah, out the door. So
and it applies to every single vet. So as I think you made a really good example with the moving of the arm or lifting of your arm over your shoulder. It's just, it's really pulling the rug out from under what was long established law.
Exactly. And
how can it be good for vets?
Well, it's not, in my humble opinion.
I don't know how it can be good for vets.
I'm moved now to go back and read this whole case, because I want to know what their logic was and how they applied the law to overturn what had been at least regulation dictated procedure for the VA for years and years and years, that pain on motion was an additional, what, 10% I think it was. So.
And our producer handed us another note, which I think is a good point. Folks, if you're in a situation where you're battling with the VA, obviously get in to see somebody competent and credentialed like Glenn. But if you're interested on your own, you can go to avetproject.org, click on VA benefits. Halfway down the page, you'll see hyperlinks that will take you to the VA's Guide for Physicians Disability Evaluations. That's where the VA doctors who give you those C&P, compensation and pension exams, have to follow a protocol. And you can see exactly what they're looking for. All right. I encourage you, if you have a pending C&P exam, this comp and pen exam for a rating you want, to look over the criteria that they're going to use to make that determination.
That's right.
And now that you've got this little bit of education that pain's been essentially ripped from the picture, I'm not even sure why they're asking about your pain level in the clinics anymore if pain simply doesn't have any basis in the rating anymore.
Well, it's like the lowest guy on the totem pole sometimes is the last to come aboard. So.
Well, there's lots of resources that you can educate yourself beforehand, which is, I don't represent folks anymore, but we do get involved on a community level basis in giving seminars and speeches and offering information. It's all about empowering. It's all about empowering the veterans, the past and present military members and their families. And that's why we wanted to spend some time on this today. What kind of appeal ratio, and again, I'm just speaking in generalities, would you see out of the claims that you introduce?
Well, it's almost impossible for us to track it like that. I would need a secretary.
Yeah, folks, again, get on the horn. Let's make some noise. Glenn needs some help out there at the County Veteran Service Office. Call the county commissioners and say this man and his two helpers, his two assistants, can't possibly manage the inflow of people. So please make some noise. All right, so you can't measure.
Okay, thanks, Garen. I didn't say that.
I did.
Well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you the statistics I've seen. Even at the regional office level, where you, as we've encouraged, ask for a decision review officer to make another decision on your claim, that's a 25% approval rate right there. So you got a 1 in 4 chance of winning at the regional office level. And then, whatever the current, and I don't know what it is right now, whatever the current BVA approval level is on claims, there's another. So, you kind of dovetail one on top of the other, which keeps increasing your odds for approval of your claim. And these are all your legal rights with the claim. And of course, they should be relevant and substantive claims, not something like Garen mentioned earlier, which was a good point. And some people just want to appeal everything just to take on the VA. Well, okay, you can do that. You have a right to do that, but it kind of clogs the system up.
It really does. You have a right, but you have to be kind of a knucklehead, because they're going to see your claim coming in with 22 issues that you've rejected or said aren't rated properly. If in fact all 22 of them are, then you really got a bad decision.
Oh yeah.
But you want to be judicious in which issues you select to argue, because you want it to be narrow enough so they can focus like a laser beam. I'm trying to overcome that little problem you had, and hopefully with the correction, granting what you're seeking.
Yeah, and want a foot stomp. This is not a quick process. We're talking normally a year at the regional office level when you ask for a decision review officer, or sometimes more. And then if that is still unfavorable and you go to the Board of Veterans Appeals, as Garen mentioned earlier, 2 years or more, add all that up, that's 3 years. If you waited 11 months before you did your notice of disagreement, that's another year, that's 4 years. And I've had claims come back from the Board of Veterans Appeals in our office that have been there for 7 years because they've been sent back for other evidence from the regional office. That was sent back, still not sufficient, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, there's a term that you'd hear if you're involved in this process called remand,
That's
where
right.
the Board of Veterans Appeals will say, local regional office, you didn't develop this to the extent we needed it to, so you redo it and then re-rate it, and then if it doesn't satisfy the vet, send it back to us. It's a long, drawn-out process. The best advantage, the best first chance you have is to get your claim input from a credentialed, qualified, competent service officer like Glenn or some others, and make sure it's well grounded from the get-go to avoid all this stuff. There's still a good chance you're not going to agree with every decision they make.
Oh yeah, I mean, but this is law. This is regulation. You can't disagree and hope to succeed if you disagree solely on emotional reasons. You got to have facts, hard evidence to have a chance at winning. And that's where we're going to guide you. That's where we're going to get you to. And if you start the whole claim with us, hopefully we don't get to the point you need to appeal, because you'll get the right decisions.
Exactly.
Favorable.
Exactly. And the neat thing about one thing AVET Project is involved in with our PR&R retreats, this is the opportunity we give warriors, combat warriors, those that have been on the front lines, to relax, decompress, and learn about their VA benefits. Most of these guys and gals have no knowledge that they could file a claim with the VA. That's a shame. AVET Project's PR&R seeks to overturn that, and you know what? We've helped a tremendous number of warriors, but we're always needing your help. We need your help right now as far as the upcoming, at Wickham Park. This is the 25th, the silver anniversary for the Vietnam and All Veterans of Brevard reunion, April 26th through the 29th. Sponsorships are available. We need all your help, and we need everybody to come out and have a good time.
Well, and that's one of the biggest events of its kind in the United States. And my goodness, silver anniversary. I can hardly believe it. It seems like just yesterday. Of course, that's when I was starting out in the business when that got started up.
Exactly. Yeah, you've been around a while, huh?
Yeah.
And folks, your sponsorship dollars on American Warrior Radio are going to be well spent too. You can look into sponsorship for as low as $25 here on AM 1300 WMEL. So give the station a call or give us a call. And I want to stress, get online, go to the Manatees Military Salute, look for AVET Project, send an email to Kim at avetproject.org. We got a Veterans Welcome Home Parade today at 4 o'clock.
Absolutely. Great.
It's going to be a fun time. We want everybody to be there. We want to thank the guys and gals that put together the surf fishing clinic, another great success this last Wednesday for the Anglers for Conservation. Wonderful folks put a wonderful program together.
Great program.
And we're winding down here, folks, and we will get next time into some details about the periphery issues. But we want to thank you so much for joining us today on American Warrior Radio right here on WMEL. And as always, Glenn,
don't forget, thank a vet.